Let's take a moment to pray. Most wise God, transport us from this time and place to a land far away of long ago, so that we may witness as for the first time your epiphany among us. For an instant, let us forget about the cold and snow of Ottawa and picture ourselves instead on a dusty hill in Jerusalem of long ago, in an annex of the great temple, so that we may hear the story of wise ones and scholars, of armies and tyrants, as if eavesdropping on the thoughts of someone who was actually there. Amen. I know I've been lucky. Not everyone has made out as well under Rome's occupation as I have. We've all heard of families who had their children taken away to augment the army, and those who were driven from their ancestral lands, appropriated to build garrisons or feed the hungry troops. Overall, though, the Romans aren't that bad. I mean, compared to the many, many other pagan nations that have conquered Israel throughout our history. Rome is content to let us live as we want and worship in our own true and right way. All they ask in return is order. That's where Herod comes in. Herod the Great, as he calls himself, is descended from a shrewd family. His father, Antipater, swapped allegiance from the Hasmoneans to Pompey when he saw that the tides were turning, and only a few years later he joined the ranks of Julius Caesar, a cunning move that won him Roman citizenship and the title of Procurator of Judea. He set up his son as governor of Galilee. Herod quickly earned Rome's trust. Brutally, he put down a number of rebellions and suppressed dissent through intimidation. And for this, Rome has now named him King of the Jews. Of course, that's not a title the people accept. Herod the half-Jew, they call him. His family was forced to convert to Judaism during the Maccabean uprising, and none of them have been very knowledgeable or observant about our faith. But like I said, I have been lucky because I am a priest. With our religion unimpeded, my work continues much as it did before. I conduct the rituals, collect the offerings, and study the scriptures. My particular passion is the great prophet Micah. My colleagues dismiss him as only a minor prophet. I tell them minor only means that it's a short book, not that it's unimportant. Many have written long, meandering texts that were little more than gibberish. Great things may come in small packages. Yes, that's a clever saying. I must write it down. Micah was concerned about religious practice untethered from ethical performance. You probably know that famous saying, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God?" Yes, Micah wrote that. He condemned the religious and political leaders in Jerusalem for their corruption and their lack of care, predicting the capital's eventual downfall. Not leaving his audience in despair, however, he envisioned a new Zion to which the nations, not just us Jews, the nations would pilgrimage there, and which would be ruled over by a perfect king. Such fantastic images, such hopeful vision, and I believe it. I believe it will someday come true. I will tell you why I believe. Last month, the priests were all called to Herod's court. He needed our wisdom, he said, which was a surprise considering he'd never seemed terribly interested in our scholarship before. At the court, I was greeted by the most astonishing sight. About a dozen strangers, the women in brilliantly colored dresses and the men all in dazzling white. And once we were all gathered, one of their men stepped forward. Yazdan Panabad, he pronounced in a deep voice. May God protect you. Jedediah, one of my fellow priests, said, and just what God is this you speak of? And calmly the foreigner answered, there is only one true God, of course. Ahura Mazda, the most wise God. We follow the teachings of the prophet Zarathustra. We who come before you today are his magi. What are magi? Said Obadiah. The stranger answered, we teach the people the prophet's wisdom, and we perform the rituals of the sacred fire. The sacred fire, said Levi. We seek in all things to be pure. Fire represents the purity of God and the virtue to which we all aspire. Oh yes, this is all very interesting, interrupted Herod, but I believe you had a question for our scholars. What was your name again? Caspar, the man replied. Yes, I would like to know where your sacred writings say your future king will be born. There was silence throughout the room, and then everyone started talking at once. And with that, the visitors were all but forgotten. Anytime a bunch of scholars get together to discuss the scriptures, a tremendous verbal battle breaks out. It starts out cordial, one priest answering another with, oh yes, but in Jeremiah it says, and another interrupting with, enough about your blessed Jeremiah. You know that Isaiah is the foremost of the prophets. And eventually someone questions the credentials of the school another went to, and that one in turn questions the morals of the first person's mother. In all of the commotion, I had no opportunity to speak up and tell our visitors that I knew precisely the answer to their question. After a few minutes, Herod shut down the commotion. Turning to Caspar, he said, I'm sorry, I'm afraid we don't have an answer for you. All is well, said an older, shorter man next to him. We will continue our search. Good luck, said Herod. And if you do find out the answer, please let me know. I'd like to meet this future king myself. My fellow priests jumped right back into their verbal sparring match the moment we were dismissed, but I jogged around the building to catch up with the travelers. Caspar, I shouted. He turned at the sound of his name and motioned for his group to stop. Caspar, I said, half out of breath, I know the answer you seek. But first, why would you want to know about a Jewish king? Pardon me, but you are obviously not Jewish. Ah, said the other man who had spoken earlier, but this will be a very special king. We wish to worship him. Worship him, I said. You don't worship a king. As Balthasar said Caspar, this is a very special king. How do you know? I asked. Caspar said, my friend, do you ever consider the stars? The stars, I said. Well, sometimes, I guess. We are camping on the eastern edge of the city. Come and see me tonight after sunset. That evening, Caspar put one hand on my shoulder and pointed into the sky with the other. Do your people have a name for those? He asked. Yes, I said. Kochavim, stars. With a generous laugh, Caspar said, I mean that group of stars right there, the 7 all clustered together. Yes, we call them Kima. The Greeks call them Pleiades. Our people call them the House of Israel. Wow, your people have an asterism named the House of Israel? Yes, said a younger man who introduced himself as Melchior. Ahura Mazda reveals all in the stars, even the events of other nations. And that big light there, said Caspar, what do you call that? It's a Kokav Lamkat, I said. And with another laugh, Caspar said, how appropriate, a wandering star. Yes, the planets are wanderers. The stars move in a constant pattern across the sky, but the planets might go anywhere. That one the Romans call Jupiter. We call it the king of the planets. We call it Sedek, I said. Another good name, said Melchior. I believe that word in your language means justice. So what does all this have to do with why you're here, I asked. A year ago, before we left our home, we magi saw something in the sky that we'd never seen before, said Balthazar. The king of the planets crossed through the house of Israel. And then it stopped and changed direction and passed through the house of Israel a second time. What the sky was telling us was clear, said Caspar. There was a new king in Israel. And no ordinary king, said Melchior, a king foretold in the stars. Bethlehem, I said. Bethlehem, said the three men together. I said, the prophet Micah had the answer 8 centuries ago. But you, O Bethlehem of Ephrathah, who are one of the little clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to rule in Israel. And he said this perfect king would come not from here in Jerusalem, but from a small, humble town, the home of David, our people's greatest past king. Yes, that must be it, roared Caspar. Thank you, thank you. We will go, and when we find him, we will come back and tell your governor. I'm sure he will want to be among the first to greet his new king. I told you, right, that Herod doesn't give religious scholars or our faith a lot of respect. I suppose that's the reason I asked for an audience with him the next day. I wanted him to know that I had come up with an answer to the stranger's question. Bethlehem, I said, as I spelled out how it was all there in Micah's little book. Excellent, said Herod. Now I just have to wait for those pagans to come back so they can tell me the exact location of this future king. He said those last 2 words with a sneer. So that you can go and worship him? I asked hesitantly. No, you idiot, so that I can kill him. What? Oh, come on now, he said. You know what the people around here are like. They hate the Romans, and they dream of an independent Israel. Let them get whiff of some foreigner saying that the stars told them that they have a new king and that there will be riots. There must be order. Better the death of one child than the might of Rome against us. Besides, the Jews already have a king, and I don't plan on giving up this job. I guess he's right. That's what I kept telling myself over the next few days. The people would riot. It might be more than Herod and his army could contain, and then Rome would come, and our relatively peaceful, stable lives would be over. Better that this stay as quiet as possible. They were probably wrong anyways. What could a bunch of pagans know about us? What is it our people sometimes call foreigners? Worshippers of stars and constellations. But they don't worship the stars. They said they were going to worship this king, our king, a Jewish king, worshipped by Gentiles. Isn't that what Micah said would happen? In days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established. People shall stream to it, and many nations shall come. The nations will come to the new Zion and its king, not just the Jews, the nations. Do justice. Love kindness. Walk humbly. What Herod said may be right, but what Micah says is more right. I could not let this happen. I set out immediately for Bethlehem. I met them in Nablus on their way back. Did you find them? I asked. Yes, said Balthazar, the child and his parents. They were perfect, said Caspar. Humble, kind. Tell me where you found them, I said, and don't, whatever you do, don't go back to Herod. Take another way home. I found the house exactly as the Magi had described it. The parents, Mary and Joseph, were still a little stunned by their visit from the exotic strangers from the east. They showed me the wonderful gifts they had left behind. The boy, a toddler now, radiated wisdom from his bright eyes. Yes, I thought, perfect. Greatness in a small package. I told them I worked in Herod's court and that the child was in danger because of the Magi's visit. Go away as far as you can. I will try to find a way to let you know when it's safe to come back. 2 weeks later, Herod called me to his court. I thought it was another gathering of the scholars, but I found myself alone with the King of the Jews, except a single uniformed man at his side. Bethlehem, you said. Yes, sir, I'm sure of it. The pagans did not come back. I remained silent, trying hard not to give away anything in my face. Do you know when this king was supposed to be born? He asked. The visitors said they saw a sign in the stars a year ago, I answered. General, said Herod, take a company to Bethlehem and kill all male children under the age of 2. But sir, listen, he shouted. You may think I don't know much about your religion, but I know this. Stars don't tell us anything, and we don't listen to foreigners. I don't for a second believe that a baby born in Bethlehem is destined to be a future king. But the stupid peasants of Galilee might, and I can't take that risk. This will keep them quiet. This will keep us all safe. Besides, it's just Bethlehem. How many boy children can there be? So now I live with the guilt of my complicity in the slaughter of innocents. I take consolation in the knowledge that I saved one, perhaps the best I can hope for in these violent times. Is he our future king? I believe in Micah. If not this Jesus, then another will be. He will rid the world of people like Herod, leaders who care more for their own power and status than the welfare of the people they govern. Rulers who fear foreigners and destroy dissent. Herod said he wanted us to be safe. But there are more important things in life than safety, like doing justice, loving kindness, and walking humbly with our most wise God.